Hi, this is Daniel, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to use two new features that have recently been added to Blender in a recent version update, where we can finally use collections and node groups as an actual asset in the asset browser, which means you can store all your complicated node groups and your shaders and your materials and your procedural stuff, whatever you made. Node groups can be an asset, and collections, which combines any number of objects. Those can also be a reusable asset in your asset browser, and that is a ginormous time saver for those who like to throw things together or have a set way of doing things or like to use the same assets in different projects. So let's get to it, and I'll show you how to get the most out of Blender. All right, I've got open Blender 3.4. I recently installed it and was so excited to find that they added back the collections and node groups asset feature, which was introduced in 3.0, and then they took it away, and now it's back. I guess it's more stable now. Let's learn how to use it. I'm going to open up a recent project I made where I basically kit bashed a spaceship, and it's actually free to download in my previous video where I show you how to make a sci-fi fantasy scene with a spaceship that crashes in front of an ancient temple. Super cool. I made this out of my Star Wars kit bash product, which you can buy online. But consider this a free demo. All these parts are free to play with and do what you want. And this is a ship I made. So I have the ship contained inside of an empty. If I go to my outliner using the view layers view, you can see all my pieces of my kit bash here parented to an empty, which means when I move the empty, everything inside of it moves with it. And that's how I like it. It just makes things easy to reorient and place objects. I don't want to accidentally grab the wrong piece and move it or something like that and ruin my spaceship. So the circle empty is really cool. And there's actually a bunch of different empties. You may not know this. Even a cube, a sphere, a cone, an image. Never used that before. So lots of cool things there to help you just kind of organize your scene. All the parts in the spaceship do have a nice generic metal hull texture, which has some grit and dirt to it. And that material will also move with this collection as an asset to use in future Blender projects. So what you want to do is you want to put all the objects that you want to keep as an asset into a collection. Remember, the collection is going to be the asset itself. The collection can be drag and dropped into future projects from the asset browser. I wonder how many times I'm going to say asset in this video. Way too many times. That's how many. So first I'm going to select the empty. I'm going to hold shift and just click on the bottom. So that goes from the first to the last object. All the ship stuff is selected, and now press M for move and click new collection. Now I'm going to name this Ancient Ship Crash. There we go. Actually, that doesn't make sense. Ancient Crash Ship? I don't know. English is hard. So there we go. We've got our collection here with our empty and all the actual objects. We can put any other type of object inside this collection. It will travel with it, such as a text object. Let's do that. Move it up here. Just put it in front of the ship like a little label. I'm going to include a curves circle, which basically makes a two-dimensional object from curves. Ooh, right there. Awesome. Make it like a ground that it landed on. I don't need it, but you know, it's there. Give it a black material. Cool. Oh my gosh, look at that. I forgot to put material on that part of the legs. That's embarrassing. There we go. And there. I'm always calling out my mistakes in these videos. Hope you guys appreciate that. So we've got our collection here with a circle, the empty with the shapes of the ship, and the text object. Let's right click and mark it as asset. That's what you got to do first, is mark it as an asset. Now step number 2 of about 3 steps is you need to save this file in the correct location. So Blender, before I do that, let me show you. Blender in the preferences of the file paths looks in certain folders and it calls them libraries, asset libraries. I've got about 6 of them here for different types of assets that I use. This one is a kit bash, so it's going to go in the kit bash library. Therefore, I need to save this blend file in the kit bash folder. As you can see, I have the names the same, from library name to folder name. That helps me keep things straight. So file, save as. We're going to go to our Blender file, kit bash, and I'm going to name this Ancient Crash Ship Freebie. I already have it saved here because I did this earlier. My microphone wasn't on, and yeah, that totally happened. So I'm going to save. Save it again. I'm telling on myself. Save it right there. Now Blender is looking in that kit bash folder. It will see this asset, this collection, and I can use it later. However, before I do that, I might want to organize it a little bit first. So let's go to our asset browser. Here we go. And if we go to the library called kit bash, here's everything because I'm on all. I don't want that. I'm going to go to unassigned. And here's my Ancient Crash ship. Let's change our view to a little bit larger. There we go. Cool. So we got my ship. You can see the text in front, the circle underneath, and it's ready to use. But it's not organized yet. It's just in the unassigned, basically the orphan area. There's no folder, no catalog actually. So I'm going to make a catalog, and I'm going to make it ships. Go to unassigned and simply drag this asset to the ships catalog. Awesome. So catalogs are inside of libraries, right? I'm inside the kitbash library, but these are all different catalogs I've made. Here's all my Chuck CG stuff, which I talked about in the previous video. Mr. Spacehead stuff I got off of Blend Swap, props and accessories from various downloads. And of course, this amazing Tatooine scene by Danny Burns. Really good stuff there. But enough of that. I see it here in the ship's catalog. Now remember this, you cannot reorganize things that are not in the blend file you have open. For example, if I realize, like I just did, that I have a Chuck CG asset here that's not in the right place, I cannot drag this to where it needs to be. Actually, there's nothing there. I can't move this joint to say here, because look at that little red text. Only assets from this current file can be moved between catalogs. You can't organize other blend file assets unless you have that blend file open. Very, very annoying. Blender really needs to fix that. I need to be able to organize things no matter what blend file I have open. It's silly and it's really annoying. The asset browser has a long way to go to be completely amazing. It's getting there. They're doing little baby steps, but that's one thing that really needs to be improved on is the fact that I can't organize stuff unless I have the original blend file open. Where is this blend file? I may not know. Luckily, you can open the side panel and it'll tell you source. Source is that blend file. I need to open that to organize it. And you can even click on this button to open it, which is just, you shouldn't have to do that. Come on, Blender. That's really, really annoying. That's just clunky and slow. So I'm done with my rant. So let's move on. Let's open a new file. And yes, to save changes, you have to have everything saved for the asset to work. All right, so with the new file open, if I open my asset browser, go to my kit bash library, and then my new ships catalog, here is the collection asset of the spaceship. So I can now just drag and drop this right into my scene wherever I want it to appear, and boom shakalaka, there it is in all its glory and all of its separate pieces, including the random circle floor, the meshes, and the text object. However, there's something weird that I discovered, which is the asset is literally just a collection. It doesn't actually have the objects there, like not individually at least. They're just kind of combined. And I think that's because this asset collection is actually more of an instance of a collection. An instance is like, I don't know how to even word it. It's like a copy, a clone without actually having the material. It will render and it'll actually save time. If you have say a whole bunch of trees in your scene, you can have an instance of that tree and put 1,000 of them in your scene, and it makes it a lot easier in your computer. But it's still just a clone of the original object. So this is just an instance. However, you can still get those objects all back and editable and individualized. If you select your collection asset, press spacebar or whatever your search feature is, and maybe F3, same thing, and type in the word real. And that first one is make instances real. It's kind of strange, but when you do that, it makes it not an instance anymore. It makes it a group of objects. It's still within the collection, but they're not parented anymore. So we kind of just have everything just individual. So if you are using my weird parenting trick, you'll need to fix that, but you're probably not because I'm just weird. But all the objects are just there, laid bare for you to do whatever you want. If you want to put them back in a collection, such as for that ship to keep things organized, you will need to manually select them like this. New collection, ship. There we go. And that's honestly annoying. I kind of wish it knows that I'm turning an instance into objects. Why doesn't it keep them in a collection? I don't know. But this is one of the many areas that Blender has some work to do on in order to kind of get up to speed and make things more user-friendly, is don't make collection assets instances. Maybe that's a good reason for certain uses, but not for me. I wish it would just put it like this. This would be way more handy for me. Cool. So that is it for collection assets. Let's move on to node group assets. So node groups are combinations of complex node networks like this that you don't want to have a big mess in front of you. You really only want to tweak maybe 5 or 6 different parameters. So you make it into a node group, and it really is awesome because it simplifies your setup. It gives you very easy control in a very efficient way. And you can customize all the sliders, minimum, maximums, of course, what they're named, how they work. And there's a lot of really great ways to customize them. And it just makes things a lot more efficient and honestly more fun. Because when it comes down to it, you want your creative artistic process to have a little fun in it and to be, of course, user friendly. Here I am playing with a number of my procedural node group shaders that I've created called the DG or Dano Grove Sci-Fi shaders. They're available on my Gumroad for super cheap. And as you can tell, they have all kinds of cool functions to add some style and texture to your objects procedurally without using any textures. And these node groups are simply a building block to use inside of your larger texture setup. So as you can imagine, having these node groups as a ready and available asset to drag and drop into your setups is a huge time saver because you can literally spend 100 hours making the perfect fine-tuned node group, and you don't want to make that again. Even just using file and append to add stuff, it just takes up time. So let's use the asset browser to speed up our workflow, and I'm going to show you how to make a quick and easy node group and then of course turn it into an asset for later use. So here I'm going to make a flat plane with Shift A, go to Mesh, click on Plane. I'm going to press the period button or the decimal on my numpad on my keyboard to center and zoom into it, and then numpad 7 to get a flat above view. We're going to use this as basically a preview plane for the material that we're going to create. I'm going to split my view horizontally to create the top part and turn it into my shader editor, make a new material. I'm going to name it Noise Maker, because we're going to make a simple little node group with two different noise patterns that we can mix and match and use for anything from dirt to grime and all kinds of helpful pieces for later materialing. To create this setup, let's make two noise textures. Shift A, click on search, type in noise texture, there it is. Shift A again, click on search, MUS for Musgrave texture. I like to keep them vertically aligned like this. Next, to make a mix node. This used to be called Mix RGB. Now, and I think 3.3 or 3.4, they just renamed it to Mix, which is what the compositor always called it. I always thought that was kind of weird. Next, we're going to add a color ramp. So type in color ramp and actually put this on the noise texture, because the noise texture is very flat and has very little contrast, which makes it hard to work with sometimes. So I'm going to add some contrast by dragging up the black point to be blacker and drag down the white point to make the whites brighter. There we go. That's a good starting point for the noise texture in my opinion. Next, we're going to add a map range, a very underappreciated but awesomely powerful node, which is basically the color ramp, but with actual animatable and controllable parameters. Drag your result of the mix into the value, which is kind of the input. And lastly, let's make an invert node in case we want to flip-flop all the values from black to white, white to black, and put this in the color input. Lastly, let's put the color output of this final little chain we've created into base color so that we can see the results. You will not see anything unless you are in the material view or rendered view. I would suggest for this, just go to material preview mode so you can see, the basic render without worrying about render times. Now let's change some of the stuff up here. Put your mix factor to 0. You could put this on color mode, but I'm just going to keep it on float. Since we're just working with black and white values, I think we're okay, but I'm no mathematician. So if I'm wrong, please roast me in the comments down below. So put your mix factor at 0, which means it's all A. What is A? The noise texture right here. This is just a crossfader. We're going to crossfade between noise and Musgrave noise. Okay, they don't look really cool yet because we haven't tweaked them yet. So let's turn up our roughness, turn up our detail. There we go. We already got some cool stuff going on here. You can see what the contrast does. Adding some crunch to your texture. Awesome. So that's pretty nice for the noise texture. Let's crossfade to B or 1. And B is Musgrave texture, which is a different type of noise. I think it uses math or something like that. I don't know. They don't pay me enough to figure that part out. So that looks cool. And now we can fade between, let it load. Come on. Noise, Musgrave. Somewhere in the middle is a nice mix of both. Let's turn this little doohickey into a node group for later use. Select it all with the box select. If you don't have that, press B, box select them all, and don't get the BSDF over here. This is not included in the shader. We don't need that. So box select it and press Control G to make it into a group. Now you're wondering, where did the BSDF go? Where did the output go? Well, they're up one level. So you press the up arrow or press Tab. You're out of what I call edit mode for the node group. And now we're in just normal material view. This is our node group, our little baby newborn node group with no settings yet. If you select it and press Tab, you can edit the contents inside of it, or press the little icon on the top right and you go into edit mode. So we want to add some tweakable controls here so they can really easily play with stuff on the outside, which is here. We're going to add faders right here. I'm going to first add some vector inputs so we can decide how this noise is going to be mapped onto our final objects. Next, I want to control the scale of the noise, the roughness, and the distortion. So we can give a cool wavy effect. I'll show you what that does in a minute. Next, we're going to do the Musgrave texture controls. So I want scale, and let's do dimension. That's a good way to control the crunchiness of it. Over here, we want to control the mix factor, which is our crossfader between noise A and noise B. And our map range, let's grab the bottom two inputs, 2 minimum and then 2 maximum, which is kind of like the brightness and darkness of it. Like I said, it works sort of like this gradient map where we can move the white and black points. And then our invert control on the very bottom. And now let's go out to the normal material view by pressing tab. And here we go. Your first shader, we've got scale of noise 1, scale of noise 2, the crossfade between A and B, the 2 minimum and maximum can brighten things or darken things, which is really helpful if you're using this for a reflection map like roughness or metallic. You can really control what the minimum and maximums are. Very handy. We've got our invert, so flip-flop, inverts the values. Oh, and here's our cool distortion trick. Watch this. If you crossfade to A, watch what happens when I play the distortion. Awesome. It adds some nice wobbly distortion to the noise texture. All right, now let's take this to the next level and really organize this the way it should be so that we can more easily control it. Go back into edit mode of the node group, press N to get your side panel, go to the group tab, and let's expand this a little bit so we can see all the stuff we had to play with. All right, so I want the first section to be noise 1, right? This is noise A, the noise texture. But I want to add a break, an empty spot, so I can see where the noise A and B are. So click plus, erase the text there, and check hide value. So technically we have an input here, but there's nothing there. And if we go out, look, an empty spot, yay. It could nicely divide your controls to make things a little bit more user-friendly. I'm gonna add a few more of those. Click plus, no text, and hide value. There we go. So here is noise number 2, break. And then we finally have the factor, which I'm going to rename to mix, M-I-X. And I want this to be at the very top. So I'm gonna click my arrows. There we go. So now our mix factor is the first thing we can play with. And then on the bottom, we've got kind of the value control, which is I think is logical and nice to have those at the bottom as a final touch to tweak things. Cool. So there we go. Oh, one more thing. We got to give this thing a name. So I'm in material view right here. Go to node, give it a name, noise maker. And I'm going to copy that, paste it into the label, and very important, the properties. This is the actual data name as far as Blender's code is concerned. So whatever you name it here, it's what it's going to be named in your asset browser. So give it a good name. You can even be fancy and give it a little color. Don't make it anything distracting now. All right, let's get to the point here. We're going to make this an asset. That's the whole reason you're watching this dang video. So how do we do that? Well, we can't right-click the node group because it's not over here. It's not an object in the scene. It is a piece of data in the Blender scene, though, that's hidden in the background. So let's change our view of the outliner to look at not the layers, but the Blender file itself. And now you have full access to all the hidden things inside. Here's the material itself, which we could make an asset, but that's not what we're doing right now. We're going to make the node group itself an asset. So we can just drag and drop this as a building block, like I said earlier. So find your node groups. There's our noisemaker. Right click, go to mark as asset. And we have the library icon. It's now an asset, but wait, we're not done. We need to organize it. Organization is so key when you're working with assets. I don't care what program you're in, you still got to keep things organized. So because this is kind of a general use noise creating node group, I'm going to go to shaders, node groups. I have a specific catalog just for node groups. And then I'm going to go to noises. These are some really cool noise things I found online for free. If I can find the link to it, I'll put it down below, but it makes all kinds of different noises that Blender doesn't really provide out of the box. And I want this to be in here, the one that I just made. So go to unassigned, look for our noisemaker. Oh, it's not showing up. You know why? Because I have not saved this file. That's another key component to the Blender asset browsing system is you got to save your blend files in the right place. That's why it's not even seeing this. So Control S. Now I need to save it in the right place. So I'm going to be organized. I'm going to go to my Blender folder, shaders, and I'm just going to save it in here as noise maker node group. So I know 100% what it is. Save it, and I'm going to click the refresh button right here. And there it is, Noisemaker. Node groups do not have thumbnails yet. You could render something and add it by using the preview. You can actually add your own preview image if you want to do that, but I'm not going to do that right now. You can add tags if you want, description, author, all that cool stuff. And over here, it does show you where this asset is coming from, which in this case is a current file. Anyway, let's put it in my node groups thingy. Here it is, Noisemaker. Drop it into noises right there. Make sure to save that change because that is a change to the actual file. New blank Blender project. Let's open our asset browser. Navigate to where I dropped it to, which is shaders, node groups, noises. There's our Noisemaker. Now let's add an object, UV sphere, zoom into it with a period on your num key. I'm going to make this a smooth shaded sphere just because I like it. Now I'm going to open up my material view over here so I can add this node group into my material. Drag and drop it, plug it on in, and there is our node group asset ready to be used in other projects. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any questions or if I screwed something up, let me know in the comments down below and I'll do my best to answer you or learn from you. I hope you learned some really great for this video. Please be sure to share it, subscribe, and like all that stuff. Thanks again. Hope to see you again soon.